Yo, what up? All right, FTP Podcast number 8. We got plenty of stuff coming up. We'll talk NFL players holding out. We'll talk NBA Finals with the spiral that's going on there, all kinds of stuff with that. We got the Hope Solo situation, and we'll even kind of compare that and take a look at how that situation's being handled. We always have our moment of sports history at the end. Stick with it all the way through. We'll be right back after the break, and we'll get things rolling.
This is the FTP Podcast.
All right, let's get things started off. First, we're going to talk about NFL players holding out. All right, we got some notable guys: Dez Bryant, Justin Houston, JPP, Demaryius Thomas, all these guys holding out right now. And I mean, is this really an effective practice? Guys have been doing this for years. I think they finally, with the rookie scale, they've really knocked out the rookie holdouts because they got all those guys under contract and ready to roll now. But I mean, it obviously, when you're talking about paying someone, no one ever is getting paid what they feel like they're worth. So you always feel like you're worth more. So I don't necessarily have a problem with these guys saying, you know what, let me take the little bit of power that I do have right now and say, well, you want me in camp to be the best that I can be when the season starts. I'll work out on my own while we work on getting me some money that I feel works. I can understand that. I'm all right with that. It's been done. It's been time tested. And normally negotiations go best when someone has a gun to their head. That's the plain and simple of it. So you got to put the pressure on them. And they're putting the pressure on you because obviously they want to pay as little as they possibly can. And you're like, I want you to pay as much as I can get you to pay. So you have to find a little bit of leeway there. So obviously not showing up gives you a little bit more power, putting some more pressure on them. Obviously a guy like Dez Bryant, he's talking about, I'm going to skip game one. Well, obviously, they want their best receiver on the field to come game one. And, yeah, you know, he'll be fined and this, that, and the other for not showing up to all kinds of stuff. But the reality of the situation is, does he really care? Because if y'all not going to pay me, what if he go out there and get hurt? He could easily have a career-ending injury in game one. And then now he goes from having not been paid to never being paid what he feels he's worth. So I completely understand there's a give and take there. There's a balance. Obviously, I don't want to go out and be in your activities, get hurt working for what I don't feel like I'm worth. So guys holding out saying, you know, pay me, boy. I'm all right with that. Now, things get really interesting when you start looking at these top-level wide receivers that are all kind of at the end of their contracts. I mean, we got two that are legitimately holding out right now with Dez Bryant and Demaryius Thomas. The next two on the chopping block that are going to need contracts are going to be Julio and AJ Green. Now, this is a really interesting situation because I think once one domino falls, they're all going to fall. See, because all the teams are waiting for who's going to be that idiot. Who's going to be that one? And nobody wants to be that guy. They're hoping one of these guys, hopefully, the teams are hoping it's the players, and the players are hoping it's the teams. One person in this situation is going to make a move that is going to dictate everyone else. If Jerry Jones pops up with Dez Bryant and says, you know what? Boom, we're going to make you the highest paid player in NFL history. He's setting a precedent that now the Broncos have to follow suit in some way, shape, or form and give Demaryius a contract similar to that, which puts pressure on the Falcons to give Julio a contract similar to that and pressure on the Bengals to give AJ Green similar to that. Agents now have seen it be done, and obviously they're saying their guy deserves the same kind of contract. So now they're all kind of in this standoff of who's going to budge first. And, I mean, I'm not saying that these guys are necessarily not worth it, but we've seen some teams like the New England Patriots just stay in suit, say, you know what, I'm not going to overpay for a wide receiver. I'm not going to pay those high premiums for a wide receiver. I can get some guys in here that can come and perform, do their job, work in our system, and help us be successful. We've seen other teams do the same things and just decide not to invest in wide receivers, saying that they can find undrafted guys, they can find later round guys, they can find role players that can come in and fill these roles in their system. But that's not necessarily to say that, you know, having a guy, I mean, who would pass up on the opportunity to have a guy like Calvin Johnson, a guy like Megatron, a guy like Demaryius Thomas on their team? Because, I mean, these are clearly top players at their position in the NFL, and you always want guys that can dictate defensive matchups on your roster. When it comes crunch time, you're like, okay, I'm going to him. Third down and long in the fourth quarter, I know he's getting the ball. They know he's getting the ball. somebody's going to win, and my money's on my guy. So obviously, they're going to start paying up for these guys. Someone's going to pay up. But the question is, who's going to budge first? Because if a player budges first, takes the low contract, he screws everybody on the player side, but gets a win for all the NFL guys. But if an NFL general manager says, all right, I need this guy in camp, and budgets and throws out a huge contract, he screws all the other franchises, because now they all have to go back and try and fix that and make money for their guys. I mean, next year, the Falcons and the Bengals are going to be looking to try and pay up, because those guys are looking for extensions already. So, there are ripple effects to all these contracts. I mean, just look at, some quarterbacks get big contracts, like a Joe Flacco a couple of years ago got that huge contract after winning the Super Bowl. All the other quarterbacks, you just see every year when a quarterback gets an extension, it's like a step up to one of the highest paid guys. I mean, obviously, we've had some of these incentive-driven contracts for guys like Andy Dalton and Colin Kaepernick, but the majority of these guys are looking for these step-up contracts where we have one guy, then another guy. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that we hadn't seen a quarterback making, over $100 million, and then we have a number of them all doing that now, making well over that. So the thing is, obviously, as an agent, it's your job to get your guy the best contract you possibly can. So you're not budging. You're sitting here saying, I want more money than what Calvin got a couple of years ago. I want more money than Larry Fitzgerald got when he re-upped years back. You're sitting there saying, I want to be the highest paid wide receiver in NFL history, because, I mean, we're talking about some good guys in their prime. So we're not talking about slouches. We're talking about, Dez Bryant is arguably the best receiver in the NFL right now. Demaryius Thomas is arguably the best receiver in the NFL right now. And then once we start getting into A.J. Green and Julio Jones, both of those guys are arguably the best receiver. I mean, you can make a solid argument for all these guys for being the top receiver in the NFL. So obviously you want to be paid like that. And I mean, it's arguable that a guy like Dez or Demaryius or Julio, once they start hitting stride, they stay healthy, they could start putting up bigger numbers than they already have, and possibly be putting up numbers that look like what Calvin Johnson's put up in the past, that could be record setters and things like that. So, I mean, you want to be paid to commemorate that. You want to be paid equal to what you're producing. As an agent, you want to be paid for that. But as an NFL team, you're like, all right, what do I value? And obviously all teams have different boards on what they value at different positions and how much they value them. Obviously, normally quarterback is pretty close to the top. Second's normally like a cover corner. And then once you start looking at offense, you normally value some offensive linemen. But the question is, do they really value wide receivers? Because like I said, we've seen teams like the Patriots say, we just don't really value them that much. We want you. We'll get you for a bargain. We can't. We'll let you go. It is what it is. All right. Enough NFL. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk some more. Hope Solo coming up. We got Stanley Cup a little bit. NBA Finals. All that in the next block. All right. Stick with it.
This is the FTP Podcast.
Women's World Cup underway, and a lot of the talk hasn't been surrounding the games on the field. A lot of it's been focused solely on Hope Solo, who, even before this particular situation, she has been a polarizing figure on that team. She's one of the name brand players. So this situation obviously reflects badly on that, because she does have a level of stardom to her. So obviously there's a lot of scrutiny surrounding her with her domestic abuse situation. And her husband, Jeremy Stevens, former NFL guy, he's come to her defense, and he's even gone as far as to call it a witch hunt. And just kind of saying that they're out to kind of find something, and that most of this stuff is kind of bogus. She initially faced 2 misdemeanor charges of domestic violence after she got into an altercation with her half-sister, where they said that she was the aggressor and that the situation just went really wrong. I mean, obviously the charges were dismissed. So now you're looking at, well, how should the situation have been handled? Has it been handled properly? Even though, the charges were dismissed, should something have been done? I mean, that's a good question of how you want to handle it, what level of evidence, and how do you want to roll with it. There's a 911 call that you can listen to here. We'll go ahead and play a clip from that.
911, what's the location of your emergency? Okay, look, do you need the police or an ambulance?
Police.
Okay, let me get us to the police department.
Hope Solo is going so far. She's fucking beating people up. and we need help.
All right, now that we've played the clip from that, you've heard the 911 call. Now you have to sit back and ask yourself, is the call enough to warrant discipline from U.S. Soccer? And see, that's a good question. It's similar to the situation that the NFL was in with Ray Rice originally, before more came out with that situation. And you got to start looking at it and saying, a 911 call, while very descriptive, it can give you something, but it can't give you everything. I think the Ray Rice situation, obviously there was video to that you could clearly see the entire situation play out from a video. You weren't hearing audio, which obviously, since it's a 911 situation, is going to be somewhat one-sided. Not saying that audio can't be extremely descriptive and let you know everything that's going around, or saying that anything in that call didn't, portray everything. But I've seen situations. I think a Saints player, Junior Gillette, he got in trouble this offseason with a woman at his house. And if you listen to the 911 call, the woman is frantic. You can hear people in the background yelling, and it sounds completely awful. But Junior, being of presence of mind, he pulled out his camera phone, recorded the whole situation. And the majority of it was her standing there screaming while they stood with the door open saying, hey, guys, we'd like you to leave. And she kept saying, no, I'm not leaving. Just listening to that makes me say, okay, audio can make things sound, can portray a situation a little bit differently than video when you can clearly see what's going on. So that's not to say that Hope may not have been in the wrong here. That's not to say that she was in the wrong here. But I'm a little bit more, if the charges have been dropped, and I'm seeing like her husband coming to her defense saying it's a witch hunt. I don't think that there's necessarily enough grounds to go on here. I think the situation with Ray Rice is extremely different because this was clearly a man hitting a woman, which, that's always going to force a higher level of discipline because that's a higher degree of an offense than what Hope was in her situation with her sister. So I'm not saying that Hope was right, but I'm just saying that I can understand why U.S. Soccer hasn't done anything, because obviously for me, I think these pro sports should rely a little bit more on the justice system than they necessarily do. If the charges have been dropped, clearly there was reasoning behind that. If there is not enough for her to be convicted in court, then how can you punish someone for something? I understand that, these people should be, you have to hold athletes to a high level of standard because they're looked at as idols by young children. They're looked at as role models. So obviously you want them to be seen in great light. You want them to be doing the right things in public and things of that nature. But to some extent, I'm a little bit more lenient here. And I say, if there's no charges filed, there's no video, there's no pictures, if there is nothing firmly telling me, I need to see it and be able to prove to myself, to prove to people, to prove to anyone without a doubt that she was completely in the wrong here. Without that, I can't just instill some discipline. Pretty much that's what I got to say on that. Plain and simple, no charges. So should she be disciplined? In my opinion, no. If I cannot firmly prove it, like the Ray Rice situation, no charges were there, but you could firmly see from the video, which obviously, that brings me back to the whole Goodell thing in the first place. But that's another conversation for another day about a man that I am not extremely fond of. But back on track, no, I think U.S. Soccer's fine. I think they're holding their guns here. I think they did what they were supposed to do. I think if she had done something wrong and you could firmly prove it, then you take it. But right now, just based off of a 911 call, based off testimony and what people are saying, he say, she say, without firm evidence. If there wasn't enough evidence for them to press charges, there's not enough evidence for me to suspend her. All right, moving on. Stanley Cup. The series will be all wrapped up by the time you hear from me next week. The Blackhawks have the series lead after Game 5. Let's hear some post-game from that. Play it.
We're trying to play as good defense as possible. I'd say at that point, just getting pucks out and not complicate things too much. Just being in good position, and Crow made some great saves, and that's what you need at that point.
We're excited about the opportunity. It's what we've worked for. Again, like tonight, we didn't want to think forward to the next game. And even earlier in the series, it's kind of in the talk, is not getting ahead of ourselves. So we'll go into the next one with the, obviously the preparation and the expectation we're going to play our best game of the year.
All right, this thing's been competitive all the way through. I'm excited to see it right now. The Blackhawks have the series lead. Can the Lightning come back? I've been rooting for the Blackhawks all the way. That's a shout out to our producer, the mastermind behind this whole thing. Just saying, outside of that, I don't have a dog in the race. All right, moving on. I said I had a little NBA Finals that I wanted to talk about, and I do. I got a little bit I want to say. Obviously, I'm not gonna get too long-winded on this one, but I want to wipe the slate clean. I want to put the Cavaliers and I want to put the Golden State Warriors at 0-0, and I just want to take a look at this. And actually, we can even drop the Cavaliers out of this situation. I just want to mention that Matthew Dellavedova. I love the intensity. I love the play that he's brought to the court for them, and I am a 100% believer in the young man. I think he's done awesome, and I made a bold prediction to some people that if the Cavaliers find a way to win this series, that based off the injury history from Kyrie Irving, this is extremely bold. This is extremely bold, and it's downright crazy. I think based off the injury history there, and based off the way LeBron plays when Kyrie isn't around, I don't think Kyrie Irving is a Cavalier for too much longer. I think he gets healthy, he goes out, he plays his way, and if I'm the general manager of the Cavaliers, I find a way to ship him out. I've seen enough guys with injury history never fully maximize their talent, and if I'm the general manager, in order to maximize LeBron, he doesn't play as well as he can with Kyrie on the court. Plain and simple, I'd get rid of the young man. Just my thing. You get something for him before you can't get anything for him. I mean, you can look at guys down the line that have had injury after injury and never been able to maximize. And then once they start having this long list of injuries, those injuries start being harder and harder to recover from, and then they lose completely in all trade value. So if I'm the Cavaliers general manager, I'm considering getting rid of the guy. Get something before you can get nothing. Just me. But that's neither here nor there. That's another conversation for another day that I can go on for about an hour. I want to talk Warriors. I have a problem with them. I said last week that Steve Kerr had some balls for the way he defended LeBron early on in the series. And that's not my problem. My problem has been with their lineup. And I've had this problem with them for a little bit. I just haven't really had, I guess, the reasoning to mention it because they've been so successful all year long. They have, the way they play the game, I think the way the NBA is today, there aren't a lot of punishing centers. There aren't a lot of high-quality centers in the game. So you can survive with a mediocre guy or without a top-notch center. I would have liked to seen the Warriors play a lot more small ball. Because I've watched enough Warriors games, and the games that they do get behind in, they go to these small lineups, and they've been able to, the leads just disappear. And I haven't seen them do that enough for me. Especially like you go back to the Memphis series they did in the playoffs against Memphis, who has awesome post players. They just pulled out the small lineup. They went extremely small, and they started making leads disappear and giving them fits, even forcing Memphis to take Marc Gasol off the court to try and defend it and adjust. And then you saw for what was it, Game 4, where they made the adjustment and moved Bogut out of the starting lineup. I would have liked to seen them make this adjustment earlier because with their play style, teams have to adjust it. They have the players to pull off lineups like this. And a lot of teams don't have playups to match up to it. The players to match up to it, that is. And I would have liked to seen them do this a little bit more. I think that they're so successful when they do it. The way they play, the amount of points that they're able to score, that barring that you're going against a team that's just dominant in the post, you can do a lot more of this and be successful. And, I mean, we've seen them have a pretty good degree of success against the Cavs with this. And I just really would like to have seen them. I'd like to have seen from their coaching staff see this and say, we get down and we play this lineup and leads just disappear. Why don't we just play it more? I mean, it's not like Bogut's been playing this awesome game all year long. Obviously, I think you need to have a legit center on your roster, but I don't necessarily think night in and night out they need to play major minutes because there's just not a lot of legit centers in the NBA, and I guess it's a stretch for me to even consider Bogut a legit center at this point in his career. But that's all I have to say on that matter. I'm just saying I have questions for that coaching staff right now. But maybe it's just me. I think if you can make leads disappear, if this is my comeback lineup, why can't this be my build lead lineup? It's just me. I think, go full throttle. When you have the MVP in the backcourt and you have Klay Thompson who could shoot the lights out as well, teams are worried about your scoring. Give them more moving pieces to worry about. Plain and simple. All right, now for our moment in sports history, 1947. Whew, long time ago. First night game at Fenway, the Red Sox, White Sox. The Red Sox won 5-3. This was 33 years after the park opened. The Boston Red Sox that year also had a better record at this point than the current squad, which is currently dead last in the AL East. All right, next week we'll be talking NBA draft. So if you want to hear what I got to say on that, stick around. You got to come back next week. I always have some guys that I'm not too fond of. Sometimes I find some that I'm fond of. Every once in a while, we find a diamond in the rough. All right, thanks again for tuning in. We have a blast doing this every week. If you want to check us out, find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, SoundCloud, you name it, we got it. Just type in From the Press Box. It'll pop up. Thanks again. You know the drill. Tune in next week. See ya.